Hi everyone. I'm in the middle of preparing my Rosh Hashanah sermon, so I figured instead of doing it alone, I'd do it together with you. And so, for those of you who are going to be joining me for the high holidays and for Rosh Hashanah, you'll hear this, and this will be the opportunity for you to either hear it again or to send it to someone you love. And I encourage you to. And for those of you who aren't able to join us in person, because my sermon is not recorded, you're not going to get the moment and the energy, the beautiful energy in the room at Chabad NDG. It's our largest crowd ever this year. And so this is an opportunity for you to be able to somewhat be part of the magic of our community. And I hope it brings you what you're looking for. As we begin this new year together, I want to first wish you a Shana Tova, Umituka. I want to wish you a sweet year, a good year, a year of life and blessing, a year of abundance and inner peace, a year of joy, and not just quiet joy, but overflowing joy, and a year not shaped by fear, but a year shaped by courage, a year shaped by celebration. It's not my style to open with a joke, but I'm going to do something that's out of the ordinary for me. So Berkowitz had a little problem. Every time the rabbi got up to give a sermon, within a few minutes, he would doze off. And worse, he'd begin to snore loudly. And this may have been a problem for him, but for the poor rabbi, it was impossible. As soon as he'd get into the heart of his sermon, that loud, unmistakable noise would erupt from the front row. And then comes Yom Kippur, the biggest day of the year, and the rabbi walks up, he takes a deep breath, hasn't said a single word, and that guy is already asleep. And the rabbi snaps. He says, "Hey, you! I didn't even start yet." And without opening his eyes, the man in the front row says, "Rabbi, I trust you." My kids say that I'm a dad and a rabbi, so it's like a double whammy. I'll tell you one more, since I'm on a roll. An inspector from the Environmental Protection Agency shows up at a farm and has a very stern conversation with the old farmer. And he informs him that he's there to inspect the property for illegal water usage and any other environmental violations that he might find. And the old farmer nods and he says, "Okay, go ahead. Just please don't go into that field over there." Well, that sets the inspector off. His face turns red and he says, "I'll have you know, I am here under the authority of the federal government." He pulls a badge from his pocket and he waves it to the farmer's face. "You see this card? You know what it means? It means I can go wherever I want, whenever I want, on any farm I please." The farmer smiles, he tips his hat, and he says, "Well then, go right ahead." A few minutes later, the farmer hears yelling, loud, panicked yelling. He turns around and he sees the inspector running for the fence, flailing his arms like he's in a horror movie. And behind him, a 2,000-pound bull, snorting, charging, gaining on the inspector with every step. He's, "Help me, help me, help me," the inspector shouts. The old farmer cups his hands and calls out, "Show him your card." We started off with laughter, and I think this year, laughter is a good place to start. Because I know that some of you today have a heavy heart. You're worried. You're looking at the world and asking, how can I laugh? How can I feel joy? How can I celebrate a new year when I feel so much fear about the Jewish future? Antisemitism is rising on the far left and on the far right. Israel is vilified on campus, on social media. It's relentless. And so the question that I have, and maybe it's a question that you have, is how can I walk into Rosh Hashanah, into the new year, into the synagogue with a smile? How do I say Shana Tova, a good year, when I'm watching history repeat itself in the ugliest ways? That's not a good year. That's not the year that I asked for or that anyone else has asked for. The sages of our tradition anticipated this very question. They foresaw the day when Jews would step into Rosh Hashanah with worried hearts. And so, of all the stories in the Torah, they choose to begin the first day of the new year with these words: V'Hashem pakad et Sarah. And God remembered Sarah. He remembered her. He kept his word, and she gave birth to a son, Isaac, Yitzchak. Now, let's rewind the story. Because it didn't begin with laughter. It began with heartbreak. Abraham and Sarah, the father and mother of our people, were married for decades without children. They had a promise, but no fulfillment. They had faith, but nothing to see. And now the years have passed. Abraham is 99 and Sarah is 90. And that's not an age that people start browsing for strollers on Amazon. It's an age of maybe becoming a little more fragile or a fading strength. And then comes the prophecy. The angel says, you'll have a child. And so what does Sarah do? She laughs. She laughs. Absurd. Impossible. Me? A mother at 90? With a 100-year-old husband? Come on. Sarah laughs because it's too late. She laughs because she doesn't want to cry anymore. She laughs because the promise sounded unbelievable. They were realistic. They saw the facts. They felt the limitations of age and time. They had no illusions. And here is where the story takes a stunning turn. God doesn't say, you laughed? You doubted? You lacked faith? Fine. Ha! No child for you. No, that's not our God. Instead, God says, you laughed? Let's change your name. Sarai becomes Sarah. What's Sarah? A princess. Abram becomes Abraham, the father of many nations. Why? Because before God could change their future, God first had to change how they saw themselves. And here's the most striking part. God gives them names that describe a reality that does not exist. Abraham didn't have a single child yet, but God was already calling him the father of nations. Imagine, every time someone said, hey, Abraham, they were saying, hey, father of nations, not old man, but bearer of promise, builder of destiny. And Sarah, who had never cradled a baby in her arms, is now called princess, not barren, not forgotten, but princess, not even queen, but princess, youthful, radiant, full of promise at 90 years old. And from that moment on, the Torah never uses their old names again. Because once you see yourself differently, you live differently. And once you believe in a future, you begin to build one. And only then, only after that inner transformation does the miracle happen, that Sarah gives birth to a child. And what do they name him? They name him Yitzchak, laughter. The first Jewish child in history is named Laughter. He's not named Strength, not Faith, not Victory. He is named Laughter. Because that's how Judaism begins. It begins when you laugh in the face of despair. When you say, the world says it's too late, but I say with God, it's just the beginning. And that, my friends, is the message of the Torah reading of Rosh Hashanah. To be a Jew is to be a child of Sarah and Abraham, is to carry their mindset. When the odds are stacked against us, we still dream. And when the world says it's over, we say it's just beginning. That's how we've survived for 4,000 years. And that's how Jewish life still thrives. In Tel Aviv, in Australia, in Brooklyn, in Johannesburg, and yes, right here in Montreal. Contrary to what a lot of people say. And that's how Israel rose from the ashes of the Holocaust to a nation bursting with life. And yes, there is antisemitism. And yes, there are threats in the world. But we've seen these movies before, and we know how it ends. In every generation they rise to destroy us, and yet, here we are. We're still singing. We're still dancing. We're still building, and maybe we should be laughing a little too. Okay, another one. I heard about these three men, a Baptist, a Catholic, and a rabbi. And they all die on the same day and they go up to heaven. And an angel in charge of admission meets them at the gates. But there's a problem. The rooms aren't ready. So the angel scratches his head. He needs a place for them to wait. So he picks up the phone and he calls Satan. Satan, can you keep them for a few hours? Okay. Reluctantly, Satan agrees. A few hours later, Satan calls back in full panic mode. You have to come get these guys. The Baptist, he's baptizing everybody. The Catholic, he's forgiving everybody. And the rabbi? The rabbi has already raised enough money to install central air conditioning. In hell. Even in hell, the Jewish response is to start a building campaign. Even in hell, the Jewish response is to improve, to uplift, and to shine light. And how proud I am to be part of this people. Now let's take it one step deeper. The Jewish story doesn't begin with an army on the march. It doesn't begin with an empire rising. It begins with an old couple holding in their hands a child that should have never been. A child born of a promise. That's the first chapter of Jewish history. Not a battle won, but a word kept. And that changes everything. For virtually all historians, history is driven by the past. Yesterday shapes today. Today shapes tomorrow. One domino knocking into the next. Some point to wealth, others point to power, and others to geography. And the details differ, but the assumption is the same. History is shoved from behind. But the Jewish view reverses the terms. History is not pushed from behind, it's pulled from ahead. Not by what was, but what will be. Not by the weight of the past, but by the pull of tomorrow's future. Picture the dominoes falling. No. Picture not dominoes falling. I don't like that picture anymore. What about a magnet drawing a small metal car across a table? It moves not because of where it was yesterday, but because of a force unseen that's pulling it forward. And that's why I think when empires collapsed, the Jewish people lived. And that's why when logic said it was over, the Jews laughed and marched on. For our history is not chained to the past. It's called forward by the promise of tomorrow. And on this day, Rosh Hashanah, the day of beginnings, the Torah whispers to each of us, Hashem pakad et Sarah, that God remembered Sarah. God remembers his promise. So don't be afraid of tomorrow. Don't let yesterday chain you. Lift up your eyes. Open your heart. Believe again. Hope again. Maybe even laugh again. Dream again. There are buildings in Europe, cathedrals and palaces, masterpieces of human creativity that took centuries to build. In Spain, there's a place called the Alcazar of Toledo. And they began in the 11th century, and they didn't finish until the 16th century. 500 years for a single palace. In Cologne, Germany, stands the famous Gothic structure, whose construction began in 1248 and wasn't completed until 1880. 632 years for a single building. Now I want you to picture the first day of construction. Just an empty plot of land. Nothing but dirt. No scaffolding. No arches. Just a man holding a chisel and a dream. He saw something that wasn't there yet. Towers that scraped the sky. Sunlight poured through the stained glass. Beauty carved in stone. And then he picked up a tool and began. One generation laid the foundations. Another raised the walls. And a third maybe added the windows. And a fourth the lighting color and the story into every room. Centuries passed. Wars were fought. Nations changed. But here's the question. Here's my question. What united all those builders century after century? Not language. They didn't even speak the same tongue. Not culture. Everything changed. Not time. They were separated by generations, by lifetimes. So what united them was this. Every generation knew that the past now depended on the present. That if they stopped, the dream would die with them. And so they built, even when it was hard, even when the stones were heavy, and even when they had no idea if they'd ever see the finished work. And I suspect, now and then, in the silence of their labor, each builder heard a whisper from the ones who came before saying, "We dreamed so big. We started something great, and now it's your turn. Please, please don't let us down." And they didn't. And that's why today those buildings still stand. And that's the story of Jewish history. When God gave Abraham and Sarah a child, he wasn't just drying their tears. He was handing them blueprints, not for a house, not for a monument, but for something the world had never seen. A people built on faith, a society built on justice, and a world built on hope. A world where power bows to righteousness, where wealth is measured not in gold but in goodness, where holiness doesn't hide in heaven but walks among us in kindness and justice and compassion, a place where love and mitzvot form the moral architecture of daily life. A vision bold enough to inspire all of humanity. But God knew this kind of world doesn't get built in a year, and not even in one lifetime. Dreams that change history need many hands. They need many hearts, many generations. And so he turned to Abraham and Sarah and said, "Teach your children, and their children, and theirs." And we did. We did exactly that. Through exile, through heartbreak, through pogroms and pain, we carried the blueprint. We carried the Torah, and when our hands trembled, we heard the whisper of those who came before us. Look how far we've come, don't let us down, and we didn't. I'll tell you a story but a man I met years ago. Controversial man. Sheldon Adelson. The great Jewish philanthropist. He helped create Birthright. And I had heard him speak. I was in Vegas. And he told a story about his father, Arthur Adelson, a simple man, a poor cab driver, a Lithuanian Jew who came to America, worked hard, raised a family, and lived with dignity. And he had one dream: to walk the streets of the Holy Land, to stand in Jerusalem, to touch the soil of Israel. But life wasn't easy, and the money was never there. And the dream remained unfulfilled, and by the time Sheldon had risen to success, his father had already passed away. Yet the dream didn't die. Sheldon said, "When I finally traveled to Israel, I brought something very precious with me. I brought my father's shoes." And he said, "There in Jerusalem, I put them on. And I walked the streets my father had longed to see. I climbed the hills my father had only imagined. And step by step," he said, "I carried my father's dream into reality." Sheldon looked at the crowd, each one of us, and he said, "My father could finally walk the land through me." I think that's what it means to be a Jew. We walk in the shoes of the builders who came before us. We carry their dreams forward, and through our steps, their journeys continue. We're in the synagogue today. I consider the synagogue not just a room and not just a synagogue. It's a construction site of the soul. Right here, something sacred is rising. A Jewish life, a Jewish home, a Jewish tomorrow. And today, each one of us is invited to pick up a chisel. For one, that chisel is lighting a Shabbat candle that brings light into the world. For another, it's wrapping tefillin that bind the heart to heaven. For one woman, it's the courage to keep a kosher kitchen. And for someone else, it's opening a book of Torah for the first time. And for another, it's giving a little more charity to mend a broken world. Whatever your mitzvah is, whatever spiritual tool your soul is craving, this is your moment to build, to take the dream we inherited and to make it live again. 4,000 years ago, God turned two people, childless, aging, weary, and he gave them a promise. And on this day, Rosh Hashanah, that promise was fulfilled. A child was born. His name was Yitzchak. Laughter. And today, look around. That child is us. And so when the world tells us to be afraid, we smile. And when it says to give up, we believe again, because we are the children of laughter. And our answer to fear has always been joy. The shofar will cry, not in sorrow, but in song, not in grief, but in life. Because we do not live in the shadow of hate. We live in the light of God's promise, an unseen magnet pressing into the present, urging us to rise and build. And that's why, after all the tears, after all the exile, after all the darkness, we are still here. And we're just not here surviving, not just surviving. We are still laughing. We are still loving. And we're still building the future with joy. May Hashem bless us and see the joy on our hearts, the joy on our smiles, our lips turning from sorrow to joy and see, look at this. With what's going on in the world, this is the reframe, this is the image that we see. And Hashem should bless us with a beautiful year, a sweet year, a year of joy, a real joy, because just like God renamed Abraham and Sarah, God can rename us. If we are joyous, then that will come true. Will be our self-fulfilling prophets. May it be that. May Hashem see the self-fulfilling prophecy of our joy and grant us a beautiful year and change our despair into joy. As we do, Hashem will add that and give us the sweetness, oh, the absolute sweetness. I wish you a Shana Tova Umituka, a good year, Umituka, that is beautifully sweet.